Sir. Thank you very much. So finally, I could find and secure a time slot from you, Richard.
I know.
Yeah. So although I have worked with you for MKI, and I got to know actually a lot of good leads in the industry also because of you and that contacts and all. Thank you for that. So for the audience, I would like you to give the opportunity to introduce yourself first about your background, and I know now you are the chairperson for this MKI organization, what they are doing and all those things. A summary of you.
Very happy to. I'll take you back just a little bit further as well. I came out of university in the music industry, got a job at the BBC in radio, and realized within a few months that I sort of liked radio and everybody around me loved radio, like loved it. And I was like, this might not be the right job for me if I'm ambivalent about the industry I'm in. So I jumped out and I got into business and into the data sector, working for IT companies. I started working for Microsoft partners and ended up at Oracle, for those who know, the big red company out of the west coast of the US, and worked there for about 5 years in various different roles. And at the time, this was 2019, there wasn't really enough focus on artificial intelligence in Oracle because it's so big and so B2B focused. It wasn't really a priority for them at the time. So I looked at some new jobs in the organization and thought, you know what, I'm 36. Why don't I take this opportunity to do something completely different? I've been reading Nick Bostrom and getting more into the ethical perspectives around AI, realizing that this wasn't just a technology, it was actually something far more powerful from a societal, economic, sustainability, equality perspective. And I really wanted to spend more time on that. So I quit and started Morality and Knowledge in Artificial Intelligence, a global development agency focusing on the fair, equitable, sustainable development and deployment of artificial intelligence, and built a global team. I think we got up to about 10 people at one point all over the world. Community, which numbers around 500 now, which I think is from about 102 different countries. We've done hundreds of online forums with thousands and thousands of people who have crossed our threshold, really. And we focus, you might notice from our name, more on the kind of moral compass, the moral navigation of artificial intelligence than the ethics per se. And what I mean by that is probably personally, I'm less interested in the legislation, regulation, law, and like the left brain stuff around AI. And more about this great ambivalent, nuancey area in the middle where we have to kind of change our relationship with the world around us as we broaden our understanding of the world and artificial intelligence, and trying to sort of lead a group around the world that steps forward positively into that. And I'll just give you one final example, and then I'll stop my introduction. A few years ago, people were saying, hey, I don't mind giving my data to the tech giants so long as they do something useful with it. And a Nobel Prize winner even said that to me a few years ago, which sort of shocked me. And now people don't say that. They say, I don't know if I can trust these tech companies to do the right thing with my data. So that's a sense of how our morality is changing and our relationship with these technologies. An organization like ours, I hope anyway, helps people to comprehend that, navigate that, form their own opinions on that, and then go out in the world, maybe with a slightly different mindset and viewpoint about what's okay and what's not okay as we, venture into more and more AI encroaching on our lives.
Thank you, Richard. So I can see that you have you have weared various types of hats and various types of jobs, and have established this MKAI organization, have started as an executive chair as well. So what influenced you to choose this AI ethics, the sustainability, addressing these kind of topics?
I don't want to give the impression that this is all strategic brilliance from my part, because that would be incorrect. I believe that, let's just take wealthy people, not that I'm one of those, but I believe there's two kinds of wealthy people, those that are lucky and those that are ruthless. So I'm not sure exactly where that leaves the rest of us. man makes plans and God laughs, right? So this is very much, I feel, a reactory organization to what's happening in the world. And I started out, I guess, focused on more of the existential risks, as many people do. Like I said, I was reading Nick Bostrom, who I had the great pleasure to spend time with since then, who wrote Superintelligence and talked about the paperclip problem, that if you told a AI to make paperclips, it would end up smelting the entire world and galaxy to keep making more paperclips. Which made me think, actually, if that was true, that would sort of debunk the idea of any extraterrestrial life, because we'd look out and just see paperclips in the universe. I'm being facetious, but you can see kind of where you start to say, actually, this might be kind of absurd. And whilst on the long-term horizon, general intelligence that maybe has a different path to the human one and would treat us the way that we treat ants or dogs might be something worthy of consideration. But quite quickly, starting in this role, I realized that there were a lot more pressing things. The biases and the inequalities and the harms that were in AI right now, which are, I would think, were more significant than I think people recognized in 2019. And I'm delighted that over these 5 years, and maybe we played a tiny part in this, I think eyes have opened and conversations have improved. And I mean, an example I use sometimes around this when I'm teaching, when I'm in with educational institutions and their leaders and so on, I say, hey, look, tell me why you think Meta, or as it was Facebook at the time, bought WhatsApp. I mean, they paid $18 billion for an application that, as far as I can tell, is free to download. I don't see any adverts in this at all. So where's the return on the investment? And unfortunately, they often still in 2024 can't tell me why a company would spend $18 billion, not an insignificant amount of money. And so then we work through it. We say, okay, they can't see the data. They don't know what we're putting in there. The messages are encrypted, but they can access the metadata. And the metadata is timestamps, isn't it? Date stamps, GPS, what groups you're in. It's kind of everything apart from the physical words or picture or whatever in that message. So that all gets zoomed up into Meta's AI platforms. Now, they don't sell the data, but let's be fair, they don't need to sell the data. They use it themselves for advertisers and make a flippin' fortune doing it. So that's why they don't sell the data. And suddenly they have information that Richard Foster Fletcher sends a lot of WhatsApp messages at 3 a.m., for example. And it goes in the model, and the model goes, right, let's get some inference out of this. What does it mean that Richard sends messages at 3 a.m. in the morning? And it analyzes against all sorts of patterns, other people around the world, and it goes, right, it means he's less likely to repay a loan. It's like, hold on. Well, why is that? And because that's true at a macro level, the people who send messages in the middle of the night are less likely to be good credit applicants. So therefore, I go and get a loan. It gets turned down. I don't know why. And if we could ever find out, and the black box algorithms would find out why, it's because I've been messaging at 3 a.m. But hold on, why am I messaging at 3 a.m.? Maybe I've got a sick relative abroad. Maybe I'm doing business with China. Maybe I've got a night shift. Maybe it doesn't, there's no context in this. All it does is this raw, dumb data that says this guy sends messages at 3 a.m. and I end up getting turned down for a loan because of it. And so that's here and now, right now. The AI absolutely works at the macro level, and it absolutely doesn't work at the micro level, and it fails many people. And we can perhaps talk about this, but it mainly fails people who come outside of the mold of the people that are developing the platforms, which is wealthy, tall, probably white men living on the west coast of America.
Yeah, sounds interesting. And so it's been like almost 2 years. I'm picking up one of the questions you told us it. So one of the like almost 2 years since ChatGPT is launched and created a significant buzz, as you told. You gave the examples as well. So in your opinion, has generative AI affected global employment the way it was anticipated to? And and also, do you foresee it having a major impact on the jobs over the next decade, maybe next 5 to 10 years?
I mean, obviously, always difficult to speculate beyond about 5 days at the moment, but it's a great question. I'm not entirely sure what the real anticipation was perhaps, 18 months ago. We were about 4 months away from that 2-year anniversary, aren't we? Because, the press likes to jump on a story. The press is now saying, oh, it's all hype, isn't it? Which we could talk about as well if you want, my views on why it isn't all hype, actually. But that's the latest trend, isn't it? And that's what we see from the media outlets. I think the key I see here is that at an SME level, a small business level, I think absolutely it has. I think it's made a huge difference to the way that companies work. And I think you see that with probably sites like Upwork and Freelancer and Fiverr, where I think a lot of people have lost out on work. And okay, they might not be employees per se, but they were making a living out of copywriting and design and translation. And, let's be honest, many people from your part of the world were making a good living out of selling those services to people in my part of the world. And whether that was a good thing or a bad thing, it was a thing. And it going away can be very challenging. It doesn't have to be that way. I remember that Duolingo share price took a hit when ChatGPT came out. Duolingo, obviously a language learning tool. But they pivoted, they partnered with OpenAI, they brought out new features, they changed their pricing structure. And now their share price is higher than it was prior to ChatGPT's launch. So, you don't have to put your hands up in defeat, I think, just when it's not general AI, don't get me wrong, but general platforms come along, general textual or multimedia modal type programs. So, yeah, I think we've certainly seen it in our organization. We need less people working in research and marketing and design. And that's a realism. That's actually happened. And then I find myself using it for consultations around HR and legal services. We just coded a lot of automation for our website. I'm pretty sure, that would have cost me upwards of $1,000 to maybe $2,000 to have an external consultant do that for us. So where's that $2,000 gone? It's no longer in the system. So I think there's a lot to think about. Now, you see the criticism, my good friend Jeffrey Funk, who's probably a genius on LinkedIn, talking about the failings of AI. But I go back to my time at Oracle, and we had some brilliant platforms at Oracle. Nothing's perfect, but there was a huge amount of time and money spent on making sure they did the job well, and they had great user interfaces. And they were often underwhelmingly used by our enterprise clients. I mean, I didn't sell to anybody who had a turnover of less than $1 billion, right? These were not small companies. And so whilst on one hand, you'd think they'd have capability, high-level employees, sophisticated employees, they couldn't manage the process change, the change management, the adoption of these platforms, which were just, in many cases, just databases. So why would we think that companies can adopt these AI platforms? And so one example of that in the news last week is that Target said they'd rolled out an LLM, a large language model, across their in-store employees, or at least some of them. And I tried to fact check this using Perplexity and other platforms, and it said it's impossible to fact check. And actually, the only official announcement was that they were thinking about deploying this. So I want to say that very clearly. Let's not get caught up in fake news. But let's just say that was true and that they had rolled it out, and the CEO said they hadn't got the engagement they wanted. Now, let's take a step back from that. They've put a platform into their employees who are sort of hourly paid retail staff with the greatest of respect. And I was an hourly paid retail member of staff once during my university days. Nothing wrong with that at all. But these aren't the people that you would think immediately would be able to harness some of the most advanced technologies in the world. Let's say they were using ChatGPT, which I think they would. I think they were using their own developed LLM. We estimate that ChatGPT has had about $13 billion investment. Now, in the palm of your hand, you've got a $13 billion tool. This is this is like NASA level, isn't it? Tools. So how do you harness that? And actually, if we get into the detail of this and we use ChatGPT 4.0, we find that it's a kind of different beast every day. At the moment, I think it's got lazy, and I've had to work really, really hard. I keep telling it, you're writing at a 6 out of 10. I want you to write at a 9 out of 10. Try again, try again, try again. And I'm just, working this machine so hard to get it to help me, in the areas that I need, like grammar and sentence structure and putting things together and helping me build on my ideas. It's hard. And I'm on it every day, full-time job, trying to figure out how to get the best out of this platform. And then we throw it over the fence to a few retail employees and go, oh, you didn't use it very well. Oh, well, AI must be hype then. So we don't know yet. We've seen Klarna, the split payment company, claiming that they've reduced significant jobs. I've got colleagues at Microsoft who tell me this is what the CEOs ask every time. They go, hey, come in my office now, tell me, how do we get this LLM to reduce the labor bill? That's what they all ask, apparently. But so what? They're always going to ask that. Is it tangibly realizable by big enterprises? Not anytime soon. But I think, yeah, the impact is real. It's significant. And I think if you are not able to harness the power of AI, then you probably want to stop blaming AI and take a good look at yourself. I might humbly suggest there's more to it than just you thinking it's not very good. Dot, dot, dot.
Yeah, so even I have felt like it really helps to time, like save the time. Like sometimes I also like use, even there are tools, design tools, all those things. If we can build the foundation, sometimes we just need to give the basic information that it will help us in lot of ways. So yeah. So the discussion is around this job displacement as well, due to this ongoing development in AI and having it in everywhere. So what are your thoughts on how AI might displace jobs, and do you think there are special sectors or types of employment which can be more affected by this AI influence?
That's another great question. And again, we don't really know, do we? But let's do a little thought experiment and think what actually might be happening here. Those CEOs that I mentioned that say, how do we get the payroll down and how do we replace people? I'd say that's pretty short-sighted and I'm probably incorrect, actually. My good colleague, Paul Levy, who I know that you know and you've had on the show, he talks about the SAMR model. It's not his model, but he's somebody who put it in my mind anyway. SAMR. So that's substitute, augment, modify, replace. And I'll just say that again. So it's substitute, augment, modify, replace. So replace, displace, that's the fourth one. And that's absolutely something that's possible from artificial intelligence, or particularly Gen AI. But I'd say it's far more interesting to talk about the way that you modify processes or augment processes. And let's just think about one example of what that looks like. Let's look at Photoshop. And, I've been doing kind of like side hustles and whatever for about 10 years now, e-commerce companies for fun, those kind of things. So I've worked with freelancers for a long time. And one thing I needed when I was doing like products companies, these kind of things, was the background removing on some photographs. And if you go back in the day, before, Gen AI was multimedia modal, whatever, you had to pay somebody probably like $20. And you send a photo and then come back a day later and go, right, I've done it, and remove the background. And I got sick of paying this, so I bought Photoshop and I got a freelancer and said, right, don't give a man a fish here, teach this man to fish. So he goes, all right, fine. So we jump in Photoshop and we start doing the background removal. And then we get to the hair and it's like, this is difficult, And so I said, all right, look, this is too hard. I can't do this. Back to you, fine. Roll the clock forward. Now you can go on Google, put background removal. I mean, it's not even a paid service anymore. There's companies that just do it in return for a bit of your data, and it's pretty much perfect. So that's how, this is changing. So that example there, we don't need to use Photoshop anymore for that task. That's, the replacement. But when we think about the broader use of Photoshop, we can think about the modification of that. So, how would we use it differently? Well, maybe with ChatGPT and generative AI, we don't need to learn Photoshop. We can just talk to Photoshop, do this, move that, change that. And maybe we still use the same product, but we're able to operate it in a completely different way through the tools, like the interfacing tools that have become available. So we can use it, we don't need to learn it. And obviously was a steep learning curve for applications like that. And we move forward, thinking about augmenting that and how other tools have come in, and maybe we still use Photoshop, but we generate the images in the first place through Midjourney or Stable Diffusion, DALL-E. Or, maybe we're using Gamma, for example, and Gamma's now creating the presentation for us to begin with, and that presentation goes into Photoshop or Canva, or, you get the idea here, really. So there's a lot more to it than just going, I don't need somebody to create, an image for me anymore. You've got to think through that process of where you want to get to and how you want to modify, augment, and substitute tools before you just say we don't need the person. So, will it replace and displace? Absolutely, I think it will. To answer your question now directly, if you go into ChatGPT and you say, hey, tell me the jobs that are at risk, and put that list in your little notepad, and then go, okay, tell me what jobs are being created. And you put that in your notepad, and you look at the two, and you go, they are not the same kind of jobs, are they? Now, whether that's right or wrong, do it for yourself, and you will see it list fairly mundane, run-of-the-mill type jobs, which doesn't mean they're not fantastic jobs and meaningful. It just means they're more simple and easier to potentially get into as a career than what it suggests, which tend to be very technical, high-skilled roles that only some of us will even probably be able to have the training and capacity to even do. So, first of all, we've got that massive leap. And then if ChatGPT is replacing some of the, again, I say simpler roles, don't shoot me, it's just a way of describing what we're talking about, then we start to lose some rungs on the ladder, don't we? So graduates come out of 16 to 18 or out of university, and it's like, and it's an accountancy in this legal company, that first rung of jobs has gone to AI. So how does a graduate now jump to the second rung without getting access to the first rung? So we've got challenges like that, and they clearly have to think quite differently about what they bring in terms of value to the workplace. Now, that value can be increased because they've now got a $13 billion tool that's available to them to be a better employee. So they can check things, validate things, get less things wrong, and so on. So maybe they, again, they augment themselves to jump that first rung, and everybody's a winner. But we know that certain sectors are exposed. I don't need to list that. They're commonly known. We know that certain kind of people are exposed. Again, you can Google that if you're unsure of who they are and where they are. And so what I think we end up with is a small number of very technical, very high-paid, high-skilled roles. So we need an educational system globally that gears up for a very different niche-type workplace. And companies that do have more productive, smaller workforces. I can't see it be any other way apart from that. Let's not forget the headline here. Generative AI helps you do more with less. The less is people. It's time, right? That's the less. It's not less money, it's less time. So therefore, if we're going to get the new jobs, what does the World Bank talk about? 85 million jobs lost and 97 million jobs created. I wonder where they plucked that out of the sky, but that's what they say. I'm pretty sure I could debunk that within about 5 minutes of speaking to them. But anyway, that's what they say. So where would the net jobs come from? Well, they don't just arrive. They will not just appear like some AI genie in the sky granting wishes. We have to create them. And that means governments need to be a lot clearer, stronger. They look at their tax and incentivization structures and go, these aren't going to be AI jobs. These are not going to be AI ethicists, prompt engineer, whatever the hell job that's supposed to be. They're not going to be AI ethicists. They're not going to be AI model verifiers. They're going to be innovators. But it's very simple. We are going to displace more jobs than we create with AI. That's a fact. I'm sorry. That's a fact. You're just wishing on a prayer if you think that's not true. So therefore, we have to put all sorts of programs in place that create new jobs and new companies from the opportunity. That has to be channeled into innovation. That means governments have to get really serious and say, this can't just be tech companies and a few well-timed, well-placed entrepreneurs that can harness and make the most of this. It has to be a lot more people than that. So how are we going to do that? How are we going to help people create more companies and more opportunities through what AI delivers? And that's a question that's not being addressed, and it will leave us in dire straits. And if we don't do that, we're only heading to one stupid place, which is where we start talking about universal basic income again. And universal basic income is some very large tech companies who are nowhere near you, Yasumi, and nowhere near me, deciding who gets tokens every month so they can buy stuff from the system and carry on contributing to the economic growth inspired, which is ridiculous anyway, in a finite economy and finite world, growth inspired view of the world. So then we have OpenAI deciding that they're going to give 1 million people $1,000 a month for their universal basic income. Well, are they going to give it to Sri Lanka? Are they going to give it to Bangladesh? They're going to give it to the UK? Every single large tech company outside of China is in the US. And we're going to give all that power to them to decide who gets to live and who gets money. And let's say they do that. Now they're giving 1, 2, 10 million people an income. And then they fail, as many companies do. And the government goes, oh, crap. This company is keeping 10 million people in livelihood. They cannot fail. We can't let them. They have to be floated. Like the banking crisis, we're going to have to fund this company now and save them, which means OpenAI wouldn't be allowed to fail. And what does that mean for disruption and competition? We've already got a world that's so lacking in competition that Joe Biden says we don't live in a democratic society anymore. We live in a monopolistic society where innovation can't really break through because it's shut down by big tech companies. That's what he says, Joe Biden, not me. And that's only going to get worse if we put more power in the hands of these companies to decide who gets the tokens and who doesn't. And I'll say again, and they're in the US. Are they going to give money to Papua New Guinea? What do you think?
No. They won't give money to those countries.
Why should they? But they're displacing jobs from those countries. We're not talking about this.
Yeah.
And the Sam Altman trial of UBI, most people, and it's various versions of this, but one version I just read said most people were spending on medical bills. They wanted innovation, but the people on the trial in the US were too sick to even innovate. It's got so far now, the inequality has gone so far that if you give these people any money, they just use it to go to hospital. It's not good.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's a lot to think actually. So, do you think generative AI is, this is a straight question, so do you think generative AI is overhyped at this moment?
Is it overhyped?
Yeah. Is there any risks that we are experiencing?
I mean, it kind of doesn't make sense. Let's put it that way rather than saying it's overhyped. Like, there's been billions and billions and billions of dollars gone into developing, let's say, ChatGPT, let alone Gemini, Anthropic, Claude, Grok, if anyone's using that. And they estimate that about $1 trillion is going to pour into this, don't they, over the next few years, whatever timeline it is that they've got in mind. And then you flip it over and you go, well, ChatGPT 3.5 is free, so I'm not sure what the ROI looks like on that. And then for the paid subscribers, it's a whopping £16 a month, $20, which is pennies. So I'm just trying to do the maths in my head and thinking, how are you getting the return on this? And okay, maybe it's like renting a house out. Maybe you don't look at the rent that you get. Maybe you look at how the house goes up in value. Maybe, with the world's data at their fingertips, they can do whatever they want. And maybe that's just, the ticket to immortality almost as a company. Maybe, which is kind of a bit of a dark thought, really. But they're certainly not getting the ROI. Bizarrely as well, I'm with teachers sometimes, and okay, they're not the greatest of paid professionals in the world, I grant you that. But they're talking about how $20 a month is way more than they would pay for this, even though we categorically showed them and discussed how it would save them hours every week, which kind of scares me in terms of how our teachers value their time. Like literally what dollar amount they put on their time. I would pay 10 times, I would pay 100 times more a month to use ChatGPT. If they told me this, they said, take it away or you pay 100 times more. I'd just pay 100 times more. I'd pay $2,000 easily a month for this. That's how valuable it is to me. So for me, no, absolutely, it's not hyped. It's brilliant professionally, but it's brilliant personally as well. I just sit on ChatGPT for hours sometimes just asking questions and getting into discussions that I've never had the opportunity to have in my life. It's not the same as Googling. It's not the same as chatting to friends. It doesn't mean I always agree with what it's putting out there. I think it's far too woke, and that drives me up the wall. And you have to work really hard to get it to give any actual interesting, valid opinions about the world. But it's phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And so when people talk about it's not living up to expectations, it goes back, I think, to what I said. First of all, can you really expect a large company to adopt a technology like this so effectively and easily in what has been a very short space of time, under 2 years? And then, secondly, what's the end game here? Like, it's not sustainable in terms of energy and water and so on to keep having all of these benign and ridiculous prompts happening millions of times a day. It clearly should be far more expensive than it is, which should be a massive warning sign to us, just like social media. If you don't pay for the product, you are the product. So to what extent are we the product here, given we're only paying a few pennies to access a $13 billion tool? So I don't think it's hype like metaverse was hype, because I think it's tangibly here right now and useful. But will it deliver enterprise level outcomes in the short term? No, but nothing can. Nothing does. It's just silly to think this would be any different. They're extremely bad at being organized. Anecdotally, when Twitter was hacked and the master password was gained, and that was a few years ago now, anecdotally, 1,200 people had the master password for Twitter around the world, many of whom had left the company. That's how disorganized they were. And that's a multinational enterprise level IT company. Think about the rest of them, if that's true. And look, that's anecdotal. I'm not saying I know that for certain. But even if it's not true, it's representative of how bad this sector is in terms of organized and disciplined with their processes and IT.
Thank you, Richard. So I want to ask a cross question. So what do you think are the most significant achievements and limitations of generative AI so far, like with your experience and all?
I'm not really sure there's anything that profound in generative AI. But let's give a few homegrown examples. Like I said, we've been working a lot with the educational institutions over the last couple of years, and they're really cool. That's really, really useful. These are teachers that are typically overworked and definitely underpaid and over their contracted hours anyway, and want to spend more one-on-one and personalized time with students. Fact. And we know that if we take the college sector here in the UK, the vocational 16 to 18 further education sector, a lot of people are at risk of dropping out of that. And the only thing that makes a difference is the time they spend with the teacher. And I don't want, we could talk about AI replacing some of those things, but actually, you will never get the passion and experience from an artificial intelligence that you would get from a teacher, obviously. So what we want more time between the teacher and the students. And then, we've shown examples now and shown them new processes around curriculum intent, around lesson planning, around creating the content in lessons, the different media presentations, and they say, look, that saves hours, that saves days potentially. They say when they see it, they're blown away. You show them something like Gamma for creating presentations, and they go, wow, that would have taken half a day. It takes 10 minutes. And I'm not saying it's click and done. You obviously need to go in and play around with it, but I mean, it's getting you 80% of the way there in minutes rather than hours or days. Phenomenal. Then you think about the English as a second language or speakers of other languages apart from English. There's a lot of those students in the UK. They've really struggled to communicate with teachers. They've been playing around with like Google Translate, but it doesn't have that many languages in it. So ChatGPT has many, many more languages than Google Translate. You can use it live on the app, by speaking back and forward and having live translation, and it keeps a transcript of that. Again, they're blown away when they saw that. That is game changing for what we do. And that might not just be about hard economics, but these are real people's lives. These are refugees, asylum seekers, people coming to the UK who are trying to get into the education system, but they don't speak English. We don't want them to get left behind. It's hopefully a fairly caring culture over here, apart from a few outspoken idiots. And then we get into personalization in lessons. Rather than setting a task, you can set an ongoing task with feedback and adjustment for the student in the class through AI. In a matter of minutes, you can create a custom GPT that goes with a homework assignment with a short URL. And as soon as they get onto the assignment, they go onto the custom GPT and they ask it, look, help me to understand what I'm being asked to do here. Don't it's not about telling me what the answers are. Help me to understand the task here. What am I being asked to do? And it can do that, and it can point them at more resources and videos. We've even used it in role-playing scenarios as well to get people's engagement up. We said, okay, you play the role of a top chef, a Gordon Ramsay or something like that. And now let's chat about cooking techniques. We did seasoning and flavoring and so on. And you just start chatting, and it role plays the part of Gordon Ramsay. And we had that with Harry Kane as a footballer as an experiment, and or a bricklayer who's worked 20 years in this particular city. What do they know? What do we need to learn from them? And these are brilliant ways to get engagement across young people. And using like Suno, the music generation app, where you can have it write lyrics and raps and so on. Why not, if children have to learn, or young people have to learn, I don't know, let's set a periodic table or whatever, why not turn it into a song? Why not turn it into lyrics? Then you've got all the AI avatars that you can use, and all these different ways, these multimodal ways now of helping people to absorb new ideas and information and learn. And, this has all opened up in the last few days. So I'd say, from an AI perspective, of course, we talk about health and we talk about finance and all these industries, manufacturing, supply chain. But from Gen AI, I'd say there's no better examples than giving these tools to teachers, empowering them to use them, and seeing the results in terms of time saving, stress reducing lives, and impact in terms of the lessons for students and their engagement. I hope that answers the question, but I've seen that firsthand. It's quite cool to see.
Yeah, thank you, Richard, for giving examples in AI, how AI is transforming the world of education. And do you think these traditional classrooms can be replaced, or like in future
do we want them to be replaced?
Sorry?
Do we want that? Do we want classrooms to be replaced?
No.
I look, it depends what we mean by a classroom, right? I mean, the idea of one person at the front and then 30 plus students sitting in rows looking up at a whiteboard, or in my day, even a blackboard, which just makes me like crazy when I go into schools and colleges now. Like, I'm 41. I think I'm not that old, but like, wow, it's different. Like, what's happened over the last 25 years, it's just they've gone from literally nothing, no technology anywhere, to these incredible classrooms full of technology that look a lot like Oracle when I go in there in terms of how they're set up. So it's incredible, and I'm glad to see that's happened. I mean, that's the UK, obviously. I can't speak for the rest of the world. But no, I mean, look, we don't want that interactive space to go away. So on one hand, we don't, that's been around since the Victorian era, hasn't it? Lines of students and them caning them and throwing rubbers at them or whatever if they speak out of turn. Of course, we don't want that style of education that just beats the creativity out of children. But we do want classrooms, spaces for interactivity. So I just wrote about this on my blog anyway, if people want to check it out. And I was saying, look, if you talk about the death of the classroom and artificial intelligence, these teachers, they kind of just chuckle really, because they've heard this all before. With the MOOCs, the massive online courses and the ebooks, VR, metaverse, right? Yeah. Everything's going to kill the classroom. Well, some teachers say the opposite. They say, actually, we'd like to, have more traditional classrooms because of this, because the technology will be ubiquitous, but in the background, it won't be, blah, right in your face. The future is not about strapping big headsets to kids' faces, right? Of course not. But it's about supporting them in much more subtle and nuanced ways, like I said, where the teacher is there and they can spend great time with them. But that said, I mean, I work with some colleges where I think once a quarter they have a kind of COVID style day, so everybody works from home, all the teachers, all the students, just so that they stay prepared for any future where it is difficult to get together, or further pandemics or anything like that. So they keep themselves ready, so they're also enabled to run completely without classrooms as well, which is quite cool. But no, I don't think we'll see the death of the classroom. And I think particularly in up to about 18, I think AI is nothing but positive for the education sector. I think over 18 at the higher education level, I think it's going to be a real problem, actually.
Okay.
It is a real problem already, actually.
Yeah, so is there any advice you can give on how the educators or the institutions can adapt to these AI related things and prepare their students effectively for the future, where AI will be definitely playing a significant role. Not even future, still like at present, AI is playing.
They definitely want to, and they're keen to. But I think you and I are struggling to kind of define this, let alone people who don't spend most of their waking hours thinking about AI. The estimate in the UK, and I haven't got the source to hand, but so take this with a pinch of salt, is that about 70% of students are using AI somewhere in their work, and only 30% of students. In the last institution that we worked in, 84% of teachers were not using AI on a regular basis. So actually, even less than the 30%. So that's an interesting dynamic. I think, teachers are no fools, right? And so when a student uses AI to augment significantly their assignment on their essay, let's be honest, it's freaking obvious. I had one teacher said to me, they pulled a student over and said, "Did you use AI for this?" And they, no, I didn't. You've never used the word however in your entire schooling life. Now suddenly you're writing however throughout this essay. What's that? Where's that come from? And so the truth is, like we said earlier on, it's not easy to use AI well. And if you just click and pump and dump and whatever, then of course it's going to be obvious and it's going to be fairly mediocre. And when I'm writing using AI, it loves the cliches, right? It loves to write in the realm of AI at the start of every bloody article. And it goes conclusion at the end. And I go, you know what? Funnily enough, I'm not a 16-year-old writing an essay. We don't have to put a conclusion on here. And it drives me nuts, right? But that's how basic the output is before you start finessing it and working it hard. And so not many people can be bothered to do that, let alone young people in school who aren't known for being bothered on a mass scale. And so it's got great potential for sure. And I think the thing that scares them, of course, is that you can go in and say, write an essay in the style of my last 5 essays and make it indistinguishable from what I've written before. Yeah, we've never had those kind of challenges before. But I think this is what MKAI is doing a lot of, is it's trying to give the teachers and the leaders a sense of how they speak about the future in AI. And I remember speaking to one college a while back. And when I say college, I mean 16 to 18 colleges. That's what we call them in the UK, not the universities. And I said, look, you're talking about like 3 outcomes for your students. You're saying like, go to university, great. Go and get a good job, great. Or go and be an entrepreneur. But you're kind of saying to them, only being an entrepreneur if you've got an amazing idea. And it's like, well, no. There's a 4th one. It's just get out there, right? And experiment and try things. You're living at home. You've got no car. You've got no holidays. You've got no partner demanding that you spend thousands of pounds on a new 3-piece suite, right? They've got no hassle like that. They've got no mortgage. What a great time to get out there and try some things. And just keep, listening and learning to clients and building up from there, and never having one original idea in their lives, but growing a great business out of just solving problems for people. I think, in the UK particularly, we're bad at this in the UK, right? We know we're bad at just stepping out there and doing stuff and trying stuff. And you can say what you want about the US, but my goodness, they do that well, don't they? That risk-taking, innovative approach of just going for it. They're the best in the world probably, and that's probably why they've got this incredible tech sector. And then you've got Sweden, that's got probably the best protection for entrepreneurs in the world, and they've got more millionaires per capita than anybody else. So, what does it take to create those kind of dynamics where people will take risks, try things, get out there? And how, as a educator, do you encourage that, without feeling that you're undermining some of the best advice, to be maybe playing it safer, which isn't, to take a risk isn't the best advice for everybody. But this, there's no greater time to be alive. I love that phrase that I can't credit, that we've had the world's information in our pocket now for a couple of decades, and now we've got a guide.
Yeah, got it. So, since we are coming to the end, what kind of final thoughts you can give to the audience who will be watching this regarding the future of AI and the impacts on the society?
Yeah, I think the future that we want from AI at a grander scale is, of course, one that's far more equitable than that we have now. It's interesting we're recording this just hours after the president's house in Bangladesh was stormed and she had to take a helicopter out of there. That's not the world we want to live in, is it? Where somebody is so desperate to hang on to power that in the end they have to be attacked by their own people to step aside. And that's not a comment on her leadership and whether she did or didn't achieve economic growth. Just that that's not the place we want to be at. That the only way to get democratic change is to storm the castle. And we've seen that in Sri Lanka as well, didn't we? In other places. And that's testament to two main problems. One is the erosion of the middle class in advanced economies, and it's the inability of middle-income economies to be able to gain status into advanced economies, getting stuck in the middle-income track. And this is what the World Bank talks about. The World Bank estimates that even India and China aren't going to make it as it stands in any reasonable time frame to become advanced economies. They can't do it, it says. The estimate is it'll take India 75 years to get to 25% parity with the US. So that's a highly, unethical, unequitable world. And so what's the opportunity for AI to change or influence that? I think that's the kind of the biggest question. Now, again, we can't have infinite growth on a finite planet. Let's not be silly here. But, do we really need that when there's so much money in the world, there's so much abundance in the world, we probably don't even need any more. We already live in a stupid world where a company like Coca-Cola can create a can of drink that they sell for a profit, and then once you purchase that can, Coca-Cola has no liability at all with what you do with the empty can when it's finished. That's nuts. We live in a world where if you're wealthy enough, you can pollute as much as you want on your private jet. And yes, it costs you money, but the pollution that you cause affects everybody in the world. So, you and I could start a shipping company tomorrow, right? And we would ship goods around the world using diesel boats. And we would pay for that diesel and we would pay for the tax and we would turn a profit. Fine. But our pollution would affect the entire world. Like, how can we carry on like this? It's absolutely insane that we have that world where if you have the money, or you can turn a profit, you can just pollute as much as you want, and everybody pays the price. That is so illogical. It's stupid. But at least I can sleep at night knowing now we have a government that takes equity seriously and climate seriously and actually cares. So, yeah, we've got so much to do. So keep asking ourselves, what's the role of AI? And it's not trillion-dollar companies avoiding tax, getting their platforms out there, sucking up all the data, and then trying to pull up the drawbridge so nobody else can do it. Asking for legislation once they've already scraped the entire world's data, and then trying to legislate so nobody else can do that. It's very dangerous. The board of OpenAI is 3 multi-millionaire white men. Come on, get real, right? Those guys love making money. Why would this be any different? So we've got to work really hard to make AI equitable. It won't just happen. It won't just create jobs. It won't just create equity. It won't empower people around the world to become advanced economies. It won't, unless we will it and make it happen. And we've got an enormous amount of work, all of us. And it's not just about writing legislation. It's not just about legislation and law. And we can't let the left-brainers dominate the conversation by thinking this is just the new GDPR. We need a revolution of thinking and morality and questions and dialogue and debate, with more people involved and more people understanding and more people contributing, not just, bless them, the lawyers. I used to love talking about AI ethics. Now I hate it. Now it's just a bunch of left-brainers writing 400-page documents that they want me to read in infinite detail about how exactly we should legislate AI. Right? And it's just locking people out like the finance industry did. Like when cryptocurrencies came along and they invented a whole new bro language that nobody understood. so that only certain people invested, and we found that only men were investing in cryptocurrency and not women, because it was just this bro culture. So yeah, thank you to all those people that do that work. Thank you. I'm very grateful, and I can't do it, but it's not the only conversation. Don't give it more credence than it deserves. It's just one aspect of what we need to do here in this broader conversation around AI. It's not just around writing codes of conduct.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. It was very insightful, and the facts you were giving, like, it will be very valuable for anyone who's interested in thinking from these facts you are giving. And yeah, so why don't we conclude today with what MKI, like, I know that MKI is connecting global leads. They're doing a lot, very good service to the community. They're trying to do a very good service. And I also got some opportunities to learn from MKI because of you. And even this YouTube channel, everything, like, you became the role model for many tech initiatives I'm trying to do. So why don't we conclude with telling some important facts about MKI's work?
Well, thank you.
And anyone is interested, how they can share.
Yeah, I mean, the downside of life is that you can't do everything, can you? And we've always tried to host really good conversations. Like, we call them like the best conversations in the world about artificial intelligence, and we mean like the most honest, the most inclusive, and so on. And we'd never had those conversations peppered by external influencers or sponsors or so on. Not to say that they would change the way we speak, but anyway, we don't. And in terms of commercial work, we've last couple of years, like I say, mostly been working in the education sector to help them to navigate, harness ethically AI, and that's been a phenomenal experience for me and the team, and I feel like we've made a lot of impact there. We've also been working with some governments. You might have seen I was over in Tunisia and then Turkey, working with the ministries and their events and conferences over there to, if you want, advise them about economic and sustainable resilience using AI, which they're very generous to ask my opinions on. There's many others, I'm sure, that could do that, but I was fortunate to be involved. And we'd love to do more of that. We're getting some inquiries about that, but you tend to not be able to go direct to governments around the world and suggest that you work with them. They kind of have to come to you a little bit. Otherwise, it's like, why on earth would we just let this stranger get involved in our political decisions? So I'm excited to see what the future holds on that. I've launched my own brand, my own newsletter, so would love people to subscribe to that on LinkedIn. Richard Foster Fletcher. I'm the only Richard Foster Fletcher in the world, which means I have to be relatively well behaved. But going forwards, we've got exciting plans. Because we work with education institutions, the summer actually is a bit quieter for us, putting in a lot of back-end automation onto our website. We've got a brand new website that launched yesterday, and it's going to have a lot of powerful automations in terms of onboarding people. So when they click that button and say, I want to be involved in the MKAI community, it takes them into all sorts of different channels, and we're building that right at the moment into new report writing and collaborative report writing that we want to put out there. And that's what we'll be consulting with the community over the next few weeks. What are the key reports that we want to create every quarter or so, and how we're going to do those best? We're planning to build a library of navigational understanding around AI. But again, AI, like the conversation that we're having here today, so subtopics around AI and sustainability and equity and all these sorts of things, again, community-led. I welcome anybody who's listening to this. If you're not in our WhatsApp group, it's arguably the best WhatsApp group in the world. Yeah. Biased, of course, but again, just click that button on our website, and you'll get involved in that discourse and discussion. And so, yeah, keep it simple, really. We want to host those conversations, create a safe space for people to be able to communicate effectively, openly, safely around their views on AI. We want to keep interviewing great people and having the community there, supporting, asking questions, contributing. We want to get our reports more regularly out and our research that goes with those, and have this compendium of brilliant information for those who want to dive into, I guess, what it says on the tin, right? Morality and knowledge in artificial intelligence. And that's us. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about it and your wonderful questions today.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you for spending your time. And yeah, finally we could make it. And hope to see you soon on another day with some other topics. Thank you. Have a nice day.
And you.